Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenna. And then next up we have Jacques.
Hello, my name is Jacques DeVore. I've owned two sports performance centers, one up in Santa Barbara called Titan Sports Performance, and then here in Los Angeles in Westwood, a center called Sirens and Titans Fitness. Uh, and we train anything from professional athletes to people who are coming back from a knee replacement at 70 years old. So we're across the spectrum. It's very hands-on, so there's no open gym, so everything's by appointment, uh, and we do smaller groups. And I'm a strength coach with the National Strength and Conditioning Association, and also have a couple of nutritional certifications as well.
Thank you so much, Jacques. Next up we have Rachel. If you can just briefly introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Rachel Rabin. I'm an occupational therapist. I live and work in a suburb of Philadelphia. And I feel like, so my take is gonna, I feel like, be so different from everybody else's. I work with the really little guys. I work in early intervention. So I work with birth to 3-year-olds. And early intervention is usually happens in the child's natural environment. So normally I would see them in their homes or in their schools or daycares. But right now everything is through the computer on Zoom. Um, and yeah, I really like working with kids. I'm excited to talk a little bit about that because I think it'll be different from some of what everyone else has to offer.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And yeah, I think it's so great that we have so much variety and diversity. So I think we can all benefit from hearing about your experiences as well. And then lastly, we're joined by Diane. If you can just briefly introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Diane Watanabe. I am the head athletic trainer at Santa Monica College. So I work with we have 18 teams, and I work with the athletes from all 18 teams. So when they get injured or when they get concussions or things like that, then I'm there to help take care of our athletes. I also work with USA Rugby as an athletic trainer, and I have worked in the past with US Soccer.
Thank you so much, Diane. Well, I'm really excited to have you all share a little bit more about your career path. So we're going to go ahead and get started with Rachel. So I'll go ahead and ask you some questions, Rachel, and then we'll move on to the next speaker. So we'll get started with question number one. Rachel, why did you choose your career path?
So I always had an interest in working with kids. And as I got older and was in college and thinking about grad school, I was trying to figure out what I could do. I was also interested in something like sort of medical, but didn't really involve med school. And I wanted something that also combined both physical and mental health, which has really drawn my interest to this field. So I found occupational therapy by looking up basically like what can you do with kids, and I saw things that had to do with play therapy, which I thought was really cool. And so I just really liked this idea that I could work with their bodies, but then also take this sort of like I was in studied psychology in undergrad, so sort of take that route and be able to work with not only the kids but their parents and their other caregivers to work on their developmental skills.
Thank you, Rachel. It sounds like you kind of combined many different interests and found something that covers all of them.
Yeah.
Could you please describe a typical work day? What does that look like for you?
Sure. So what I'm going to describe that is my typical work day is probably not going to be anything like any other OT that you talk to. So if you look up more about what occupational therapy is, there's just such variety in the field. I mean, similar to some of the other fields on here. So obviously I work with kids, but and I'm in the home setting. But if you work in outpatient or in psych, inpatient or outpatient psych, or in with adults or older adults in a nursing home, like the schedule is going to be very different. So I'm also part-time right now, which is something I like about this field, is very flexible. So I typically see like 3 or 4 kids in a day. Again, that's very part-time. Some people, see like 8 or 9 or so. Um, and I have most of my sessions are an hour long, and I basically, especially now when it's on camera, or on the computer, I mean, I'm, talking to families, coaching them on how to interact with their kids, coaching them through different exercises to do, whether that's physical, like doing, little kid yoga poses, or if that's working on their sensory systems, which is a really big thing that OTs work on and that I have a big passion for, is helping kids be regulated and attentive through all the different senses. So working on, visual sense, auditory, lots of movement, whether that's what we call proprioceptive input, which is when you like really get that input in your joints and muscles, or vestibular input, which has to do with moving your head and sort of your inner ear and finding your sense of balance, which also connects to concussion, which it sounds like some other people will be able to talk more about. Um, and so I really like taking this whole sensory approach with kids and with their families to help them in whatever task they need to do, whether that's a play skill, whether that's positioning for getting dressed, whether that's being social with peers on the playground. So it covers a lot.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Could you please let us know what are the necessary steps that students must take to prepare themselves to become an occupational therapist?
Sure. So certainly looking at prerequisites of what grad schools are expecting right now. So usually that's sciences, biology, and anatomy, and kinesiology. Um, Getting experience, getting to observe in a few different settings. I certainly highly recommend that. I always knew that I was interested in pediatrics, but I made sure I got volunteer experience with older adults and nursing home as well. Um, and sorry, I'm looking at your question again. Um, so right now, OT requires a master's. I was looking it up for this actually, and by 2027, it will require a doctorate. So programs will, I imagine, be lengthier and more involved, but for the next, I guess, 7 years, it's a master's. So I would just say it's important to look at program lengths, look at GRE, whatever testing requirements they have, and just making sure you get your prerequisites done and volunteer experience. And looking into that volunteer experience sooner than later is always good so that you can get a variety and kind of find like what you think your niche might be.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And can you share what are the salary ranges for your position? So starting with like entry to mid-career and advanced and so on.
Yes, so I was looking this up for this specifically because there's quite a range. So again, this is going to depend a lot on what setting you're in. Um, the numbers I found, sorry, let me just pulling it up here. Um, Showed so entry level can be anywhere from like 40 to 85 grand. Um, Mid level would be closer to 75, and then advanced is 85 plus. So typically being in like a home healthcare or nursing home setting, you're probably going to make a lot more. Being in like outpatient pediatrics, which is what I did before early intervention, it was like nowhere close to that. I make a lot less, like I find that's like much more fun. But yeah, in an outpatient setting, which I'm sure it depends obviously on your state and county and all of that. But the setting is just gonna impact a lot on what that salary range is gonna be.
Right. Thank you so much, Rachel. And you mentioned you are out of state. You're in Philadelphia, so that might look a little different here
Sure.
in Los Angeles.
Yes.
All right. So we'll move on to the next question. This is something I'm excited to hear. What are the advantages and disadvantages, so pros and cons of your job?
Yeah, so I love that this job is so flexible. I love working with people. I love problem solving. And I like getting, it's not just like, here's a problem, let me try to come up with a solution. It's like really doing it with the people that are going to benefit from it. So in my situation, that's obviously with the kids, but it's a lot with the families. So helping them just meet whatever needs they need to meet. I would say a disadvantage, it's hard to come up with disadvantages, but one is just like bringing home the work, right? So again, depending on the setting you're in, there's a lot of times that you see something really sad or really hard. Share an experience with someone, they found out their child just got a diagnosis, or you're in an old age home and someone passed away, or it could obviously be anything like that. So just taking that home and having to separate from it when you go back to your own life.
Mhm. Thank you. Appreciate the honesty. I think it's really important to consider that that's a real aspect of the job. All right. Are there any internships that have kind of shaped your experience and motivated you to go into this field, or are there any specific internships you would encourage students to take part in?
I think I would just again emphasize variety, right? So, I knew I was interested in pediatrics, but I sort of forced myself to make sure I got to get a taste of other things as well. When I had to do field work for my program, so after you finish the school academic piece, there's 6 months of field work where you go out to different locations, which I actually right now have a student working under me doing her field work. It's been really interesting on doing that over telehealth, but that's a longer conversation. But I did for my field works. One was in pediatric outpatient, which is what I thought that I wanted to do, and then one was in a nursing home, and it was just really cool again to see the variety of what OTs can do between both the physical piece and again that psychological piece of like just working with people, um helping their families, helping them overcome whatever injury or whatever their situation is, helping them gain the skills to be as independent as they can be. Um, so I don't have a specific like place or type of place that I recommend, but I just would emphasize that variety and trying things that are new because you never know. There are a lot of people in my class, in my grad school class, who came in, really gung ho pediatrics, and like by the time we graduated, they're like, oh, I'm definitely going to do older adults and vice versa. So I think it's important to consider all the different options.
Yeah, thank you for that, Rachel. I think diversity is really important because, as you shared, not only do you learn what else is out there, but you get exposure to what you like, what you don't like, and you're really building skills early on. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, Rachel.
Sure.
We will go ahead and move on to Jacques. Um, I will go ahead and start with the first question. So, why did you choose your career track, Jacques?
My career path was pretty circuitous. I mean, even though I've been in the strength and conditioning, I took the CSCS. Some of you may remember Blue Books and Scantrons, but I did it at UCLA over 20 years ago, where we sat in a big lecture hall and they had videos and we filled out. You didn't even know everything's online now, so it's changed the game. But I was in the finance business, and this was something that I did as an avocation because I've been an athlete. I wrestled in high school and college, and so I've always been involved in sports. I've been a cyclist and a bike racer. I just saw Tom come in off his bicycle. It looked like you're having fun, Tom. And so I wrote a book on strength training for cyclists. So I've always had this interest in exercise physiology, and I've probably, self-educated. I haven't formally gone to school, but I hire and I have a lot of internships here with people who are either in a master's program. And so I've probably given myself an education at that level over the last 20 years, just because I have a voracious appetite for learning more about how our bodies work. And then I train a lot of really good athletes, so I'm always trying to figure out the puzzle. So I decided about 5 years ago to make it full time. That center in Santa Barbara, I opened over 20 years ago. So, and the way I came into the business was originally a friend of mine who ran a physical therapy center called Vert Sports Performance here in Santa Monica. They were having problems from a business perspective. And he said, Jacques, would you like to get involved? And I said, okay, I'll take a look at it. And I ended up running it. And that's how I kind of fell into it as a business. I didn't think that I would do it as a career. And we had a conversation that before the students got on, and I was talking about pivoting and how in your career and in your life, you have to look at, opportunities to make a pivot. And this is going to be the new norm. And I think that you students that are in school now are probably better at it than most as they get older, because people have a tendency to say, this is who I am and I can't make a change. Well, I did at a much later, started this business full time, 7 years ago. I was running the Santa Barbara Center for over, 15 years prior to that, but I was an absentee owner. I was writing workouts involved in it and educating myself along the way, but I wasn't full time. So I made the decision, this is what I love to do, and did it. So that's how I got into the business.
Thank you, Jacques. And can you briefly describe what a typical work day looks like for you?
Yeah, if you don't like to get up early, you shouldn't be in this business because I'm up at 4:15 or 4:30 because our clients come in at, as early as, 5 o'clock in the morning. We have people in here. So it is definitely something that you have to get comfortable with. I personally have been getting up early my whole life, but I hate it. I don't like it. But you get good at it and you just figure this is part of the business. And so my typical day starts, I'm up at 4:30 in the morning. I'm in the gym, opening it up usually at around by about 5:15, 5:30. The first clients usually are in here at about 5:45. And then I'll be here today until about 4:30. So they're long days, especially if you're an owner, it's even longer. If you have a different type of position, where you're working for someone, then of course you won't put those kinds of hours in. But I really believe that the amount of self-education, the amount of continuing education, if you don't look at it as something that I'm going to commit to 12 hours, then you'll never be really that good at it. This industry is, Instagram driven, TikTok driven. I mean, it's now just, they say that a trainer, if you have abs and a smile, you can be a trainer. And unfortunately, there is not a big barrier to entry. But if you want to be, differentiate yourself, and this is the same thing, and I'm sure that the physical therapist will weigh in this, and Rachel added some to this, you have to be willing to do the homework because there's a lot of people out there that are in this business. It's a very competitive field. And you have to be willing to say, I want to be better at it than other people. So if you don't have that appetite for it, then your day will be short, but you may not have that as satisfying of a career. So I think that you have to look at it, what do I want to get out of it? Because whatever you put in it is going to give it. So my days are long, but I don't look at it like working that much because I love it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jacques. And you bring up a great point. I mean, technology and social media is really changing so many occupations and careers and the way that it looks. So that's an important thing for everyone to consider. I think you kind of answered some of this question, but if you want to add anything else, what are the necessary steps students must take to prepare themselves for your professional occupation?
Yeah, I think that probably the biggest step is in anything, having a curious mind. I mean, I really think that if you have a curious mind, then you will find the path, especially with all of I mean, I didn't grow up with the internet. I had to go to the library. I mean, it was a pain in the rear. if I have a subject matter, I have someone that comes in here and I want to do all the research on patella tendonitis. I can sit there and look at so many modalities, YouTube. So there's a lot of resources right at your fingertips on your phone that really allow you to accelerate your ongoing education at a rapid rate. It doesn't mean that you can substitute it for a formal education at times, but what it does do is it allows you to really expand your base of knowledge at a rapid rate if you have a curious mind. If you don't, then there's no value to that. I mean, having the ability to have it at your fingertips isn't any good if you're not willing to go ahead and enter it into the search bar. I mean, it's not going to happen. So it's like anything else. It's a lot easier. But if you have that kind of curious mind, and our industry is taking it on the chin. So if you're looking at, any of you in the audience are looking at saying, I want to be in the fitness business, it's going to change. And it already is. Now, I think that eventually people are people, and people want to be around other people. And it's already example. There are some gyms that are quote underground gyms that are packed right now that are open illegally, and I hear about it all the time. But so if people want to be around, people want to be fit, and I think that there's a need for it today. As Jenna was saying earlier, a lot of this COVID has added a lot of weight and loss of lean body mass. And in the study of gerontology, they don't know if people die from old age or loss of lean body mass, because eventually, if you lose enough lean body mass, something will infect you and kill you. So if you want to, be resilient against, these kinds of environments like COVID, then being healthy is a great way to do it. And unfortunately, the media has not really spent much time talking about our country, because of the level of obesity that we have here has been hit probably harder than a lot of them, because over 50% of the population is suffering from obesity right now. So that's what I think you need to be willing to do, is to step up and say, I'm going to go the extra mile. Sure, you have to have Instagram. We have an Instagram post. But if that is your whole business, is you posting Instagram posts, then you're not going to have a successful business. I try to educate on our social media is what I try to do. And I figure that will draw people to me. It also is, I think there's three legs of the intellectual stool, and one of them is writing. And so if you're writing on social media posts, if you're blogging, if you're doing this, especially as a young person today, if you start writing a fitness blog and no one follows it, who cares? Just pick a subject and write about it. And you're going to learn a lot, because teaching, as the teachers in the group know, is how you truly learn something, is to teach it. So that's the way I would start if I were in your position right now.
Thank you so much, Jacques. I think so many of us, even struggle to get any steps in, because we're just home. We just walk from maybe the bedroom to the office, or the dining table if that's the office. So
Right.
That's an excellent point. And I think right now, one of the possible silver linings of our situation is that we're slowed down and we get to do some more of that research. So putting in that, research, like you said, so we get to be a little bit more curious and take advantage of some of the time that we have. So I think that's a great tip for all of us.
The other thing that I would add to that is your perspective and how you frame everything. Is really going to impact it. I know a lot of people are suffering from depression and the isolation and everything else that's going with this COVID situation. But I think that if you have an opportunity, like you just said, here's an opportunity that I don't have to go to class, and actually, so I have all this commute time. I have all this other time. I mean, right now, I took Spanish in college and high school, but I just hired a Zoom tutor out of Mexico, because I go, well, I got this time. I'm going to shore up my Spanish skills. So I think that if you look at this as a great opportunity, and any obstacle that you run into, because in this industry, it's going to continue to change. And if you look at it as, okay, how can I improve myself? How can I look at this? And that's what I'm looking at. I became much better at Zoom workouts. I'd never really done that many of them. But there's an art to it. And to make it a really excellent workout, And then the challenge of taking a small amount of equipment in somebody's house and designing a great program for that person is challenging. And so I looked at it as an opportunity for me to pick up another skill set. I never really got too depressed, even though, I mean, I'm a business owner. We were closed for 4 or 5 months, completely closed, with no really end in sight and not any understanding of what the future will hold.
Yeah.
So that's a difficult situation when you say, I've invested all of this money and time, and I have employees and I have everything else. Where am I going with it? But I didn't let it get me down. I looked at it as, okay, what do I have to do? How do I approach this problem to solve it? And how can I become better positioning my business to weather this in the future? So those lessons are going to be invaluable for me to be competitive moving ahead.
Thank you so much, Jack. I think that applies across the board. Thank you for that advice.
Sure.
And I just wanted to share, because I know Rachel won't be with us for the entirety of this. If any of our panelists want to share their social media handles or their websites, you know, we'd be greatly appreciated. I think some of our students would be excited to connect with you that way.
So Mel,
Yeah.
before we move on, I'm your little timekeeper. So it
Okay.
is 4:00. I'm on Philly time, so
Yeah.
it's 4:05 in Philadelphia. So is there any last questions for Rachel before she jumps for her Shabbat and her evening? So I will put her email. I guess she did inform me that I guess only Mel and I, as the hosts, can do a chat to everyone. Is that what you were telling me, Rachel?
Yeah, I didn't see an option to, when you asked your question, I responded, but I think it only went to you.
Okay.
Let me go ahead and edit that. Thank you so much.
So,
Answer questions through email after if people have that.
yeah. All right. So any last questions for Rachel, and then we'll let her go because I know she probably has some things to do in the next probably what, hour, 60 minutes?
30 minutes, man. Sunset's early.
Early nowadays. Yeah. All right. All right,
So
Rachel, any last words of advice? And I'll do a copy and paste of, I asked her about the internships, as you guys saw, so I'll copy and paste that. Any last, thank you, Rachel, though. You know.
Thank you so much,
Good
Rachel.
luck to everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, Rachel.
Bye, Rachel. Really appreciate it. So I'm going to jump really fast before Mel moves on to what Jacques was saying about working out. The only thing that's kept me going is to have I actually do have a buddy. Those on this call that know me know that my social circle was very, very large before COVID-19. It's shrunk to about 4 people. And one of them is the lady that I go and work out with all the time. And when you know someone's meeting you, someone that you're comfortable with, and it's always outdoors, it's never, in our homes. But I think sometimes being held accountable, knowing that someone is standing on a street corner waiting for you is a very powerful way to continue to work out. So, all right, Mel, back to you.
Thank you, Joanna. All right, so we were now at the special skills and knowledge question. Jacques, do you have any suggestions of special knowledge, skills, and abilities that would be required for your occupation?
For my occupation personally, I mean, I'm more of a strength coach, and I look at myself as a coach, and that's what we do. I think that if you look at the difference, and whenever I have an induction of a new client, I tell them that we're coaches, not trainers, because I find there's a big distinction between the two. Diane is a athletic trainer. If you were to look at her at a professional basketball team, she'd be sitting on the sidelines waiting for someone to come in and get their ankle work done or helping out the team. The coach is on the sidelines wanting to win. That's their job. And so I look at my responsibility to my clients as winning the workout and winning and hitting their goal that they want. So we're goal driven, and that means that you have to have the ability not just to say yes to everything, because clients in many cases are hiring you to be accountable. So they want an accountability partner. Well, that means that you have to have enough confidence in your own ability to say, okay, I'm going to call this person's BS. You're not going to be successful if you don't do X. And my moniker on my website says truth and fitness because I believe in that truth. And I think when you share that with your client, and I think that comes from a certain level of confidence in your own capabilities. So I think that you want to capture the capability first. That will give you the confidence to be successful after that. So, and then on an ongoing basis, trying to improve that capability. It's like, going out for a job interview and, you spill coffee on your shirt. You don't have a lot of confidence when you walk in, you know. But if the shirt's buttoned up and everything looks great, you feel good about yourself and you walk in. And I think that if you're buttoned up in terms of your knowledge base, then I think that skill set, no matter what the career is going to make you successful and really differentiate yourself. And, I think that if in my case, being an employer and having people apply to me and send me resumes and these kinds of things, I'll tell you the things that are most impressive. And my grandmother used to tell me, you got to send a thank you note. Send a little note. Make sure you write the thank you note. If you want to differentiate yourself in an interview process, write a handwritten note, put it in the mail. No one does that, ever. And I'll look at it and I'll go, holy smokes, I got to look at this person's resume again. Because everyone just, it's ridiculous. They want to send you a text or they want to do that because that's how you communicate. But what you want to do is, if that's the norm, then you want to separate yourself. So I think that the other skill set is to say, how do I differentiate myself, not only from a skill set, but from a employee-employer set, because you have to start somewhere. And if you show up, even as an intern, and you don't look at it like a job, I'll tell you, I have a full-time coach here. He's a CSCS. He came in as an intern. Within 2 weeks, my primary coach had left, so I started grooming this guy, and he's been with me for 3 years. It's a full-time gig. It's a great job, and he loves it. But he didn't show up expecting that. So all I can say is that if you look at an internship as going to be, I'm going to just spend 6 weeks here, and this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to learn something. But if you look at it as this is my long job interview, you'll be much more successful.
Thank you, Jacques. And, Jacques been mentioning different internship opportunities and things that you can do to increase your chances of being successful in this occupation. I just want to plug in that the Career Services Center can really help you with anything career related. So if you're feeling stuck on how do I find an internship, where do I go, where do I search, how do I get a resume ready, how do I dress for an interview, we can definitely help you with all of that.
Yeah, and that's the key, because it's much more difficult. And in our industry, from the strength and conditioning standpoint, there's a high turnover. And you get, honestly, I've had trainers that started out great and then they just ghost me. All of a sudden they're supposed to show up for a shift and they send some text, hey, I'm not going to make it in today. Can you cover for me? I have one particular instance, and then that was it. I texted, are you coming in on Monday? Yeah, I'm going to do my best. And they disappear. The last word of advice is don't burn the bridge. It's a very small street in this fitness world. If you're going to have to exit for whatever reason it is, do it in a professional manner. Be honest and straightforward and just say, hey, listen, unfortunately, my mom's sick or whatever it is, but I'm not going to be able to continue, but I don't want to leave you hanging. And part of my interview process when I'm talking to someone is I said, do not burn me. I have to actually tell that to an employee. Don't burn me, because if you burn me, I can be a great resource for you as a reference, as opening up a door for another opportunity that I walk in a circle to and I go, wow, this person would be perfect for it. But if you burn me, why would I give you a reference? Why would I go out of my way? I see my job as an employer as if I can't satisfy your needs for a job from an income standpoint and from a personal emotional satisfaction standpoint, then I want to find you a job. I want to help you find something. That's just my contribution to humanity, is see if I can find you another place that does fit that bill if I can't do it. So if you go in with the attitude that it doesn't matter that much, then you're going to reap what you sow.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jacques. Could you share the salary ranges for someone in your position, entry level, mid, and advanced, please?
If you go, it's funny. I mean, the University of Alabama football program, the strength coach there makes over $500,000 a year. That's the high end. That's the high end. So that possibility exists, but those jobs are, you have to have a master's degree to even get into a university today. Even as an assistant strength coach, you work your way up. Most individuals will start there and they eventually want to go to opening up their own practice. That's typically the route that most people go. And so as a personal trainer, if you're looking at it from that perspective, as opposed to like more of a strength coach, I mean, a really good personal trainer can make, you know, $175 an hour and make a really good living doing that. But that's a job. And you have to say, what do I want? What do I want? Do I want a job where I'm clocking hours, or do I want to build a business or a career? There's two different ways of looking at it. And so I think that if you say I want to build my own business, then the sky's the limit. I mean, there's a lot of very successful practices where, you know, not being a strength coach at the University of Alabama, you can still make $500,000 a year. But I would say on average, you know, entry level positions are going to be somewhere around that $40,000 level, you know, as a strength coach. As a trainer, the industry says that the average personal trainer makes about $25,000 a year. So because, and for a lot of the reasons that I talked about before is why there's no barrier to entry. So you have thousands and thousands of people out there trying to be personal trainers because it's a stop to get somewhere else. They're really actors and they're just doing personal training in between. So I think that you have to determine, is this going to be my career or is it a job? If it's a job, then you're not going to make as much money. If you say that it's a career, then I would say somewhere around that $40,000 level. And then if you're running a center like mine, then it's going to be somewhere around $75,000 to $100,000 for someone who is a manager of a center like this. And then, you know, if you're owning a center, obviously the numbers go up, but then there's a lot more risk involved. And then, you know, within a university, the problem with most pro teams, if you're a strength coach in universities, unless it's a big football program or something, the pro teams don't want to pay much because they're saying you can use this for your future. You can say I was a strength coach at the Lakers, and so they pay a little less than the colleges because the colleges, they hang their hat on winning. By the time to the pro ranks, a strength coach's mainly job is not to hurt them, you know, because these people are at such a high level of fitness. You know, you can do only so much, you only have them for a smaller amount of time, so they actually don't invest as much. At the college level, it's a lot more because you can make big changes with college level athletes that you don't need to make with a pro level athlete. So that's kind of like an industry overall look at the industry. Now, it's not to say that now, if you decide to go to what used to be like an Equinox or something like that, you know, we'll see where that industry goes. The salespeople made the most money. I mean, then, you know, you're in the industry, but you're in a sales capacity. And those people make the money because they're not so concerned about, you know, getting a return on someone's fitness as they are, you know, selling a membership. You know, I want my clients to show up. My calling card is moving the needle on my clients. That's what I do. So I have a little different business model.
Thank you so much, Jacques.
Sure.
We have one of our participants shared that he worked at Equinox, so he has some experience there. And he was also sharing that even within the pandemic, he's able to make $50,000 to $100,000 if you're working online remotely,
Sure.
doing it in a safe way. So thank you.
Yeah, like a good personal trainer can do that easily, but they're hustling, and you know, you're doing 6 or 8, you know, workouts a day. You know, you got to be booking 30 to 40 to 50 sessions a week. So the only thing is you're working weekends. You know, it's hard, and there is a level of burnout in this business. So my only caution to that individual is, you know, you want to be able to get some balance in your life because at some point, you know, and the other thing is, how do you get leverage? Leverage in a business is getting, like one lawyer can only bill so many hours in the day. But if he gets an associate working with him, then that lawyer, he can take a piece of that action.
Mhm.
So if you can build a business where you can get leverage, then you can work less hours and make the same amount of money or more money. So then you need to look at it like a business person and not like a job, because if that trainer is sick, what happens? If they can't work for a few days, what happens? They're not going to earn any money. So they either have to keep working to make the 100,000. It's not like a salaried position. So it's wonderful. And that person's obviously a good trainer. But you want to look at it, hey, Tom, you want to look at it, Tom, from the perspective of how do I build leverage? How am I going to get leverage in my business? Because ultimately, that's what you want to do. You want to have leverage so that you can work less hours, and maybe you're at a higher level with your clients, and you have 2 or 3 other people, like the physical therapist. They have physical therapy aides, and the physical therapist is developing the program design and doing all of the protocol for them. And I'm not going to take any of Alex's thunder, but that's what physical therapists do. They get leverage by running a center and then having other people that are working, because you can't do 5 clients in an hour otherwise. So that's what you need to figure out, Tom, is how do I get some leverage? And one way is online, because you're leveraging your time, but still then there's another limit. How many hours can you do Zooms in a day? And then you say, okay, so what would be the next way to leverage my business and my skill set? So that's what you need to look at.
Thank you so much, Jacques. I'm noticing the time. I want to make sure we do have enough time for all of our panelists. Could you maybe take a minute to share any internships that you would recommend students to participate in?
Yeah, I mean, I sent Mel all my contact info, and she has my email, and you have all of that anyway, but our website, Instagram, Facebook, etc. We're looking for interns. I mean, I'm always, right now, not as much because of what we're dealing with, but when the final COVID is lifted, but my suggestion would be is find a practice that you would want to work in and approach them directly and volunteer yourself. So if you say, hey, listen, I want to be in a physical therapy office, and if you show up with your resume and you know a lot about their business and you say, hey, listen, I'd like to work, I love what you guys are doing, how do we create an internship? You could probably create it, because any employer is looking for people like this and dying to find someone that has that kind of initiative today. So if someone walks in my door, I've hired people like that, where they walk in and they say, hey, listen, I'm looking for something, this is what I want to expand my knowledge base, and do your research, and you could find the kind of practice. And I guarantee you, if I just said to myself, I want to find an internship, I guarantee you within a week, I would have an internship somewhere, because I would just start doing a Google search on the kind of practice that I want to be involved in. I would contact them and say, listen, I'm going to come in. And the only thing is, it's an investment. You're not going to get paid, and I know that there's some controversy over that, but I think that if you look at it, the right environment where you're going to learn something, it's a really interactive way of being on Google. That's really what it comes down to, but you have someone that's actually doing it. So, and that's an invaluable amount of experience, but you can dictate the terms of it. If someone comes to me, if any of my interns, they are not walking out of here without learning something. And you should insist on that as an intern. You should say, here are my goals. I want to learn this, and this. Will I be able to do that? And if they say, no, I just want you to fold towels, well, then I would run out the door. That's not going to help you. But if you want to learn something, then find a practice where they're willing to teach you and spend the time with you, give you direction. What I do with a lot of them is I give them a curriculum, and I say, okay, I want you to study this subject, and then we're going to come back and we're going to spend 30 minutes talking about it, and then I learn something. So that's how we run our internships. They need to be educational in nature. So even though you're going, oh gosh, I just want to get something, you should be more proactive about how you dictate the terms of the internship.
Thank you so much, Jacques. I think that's really great advice. I want to thank you so much for your time answering all these questions for us today. And I'm sure students have many questions for you. So maybe we can get to some of those towards the end.
Okay.
Next up, we have Diane. Diane, just in case you missed her intro, she's an athletic trainer at Santa Monica College. I'm going to have Diane go ahead and answer our first question. Why did you choose this career path, Diane?
Well, I was always interested. I was an athlete in high school and I like being outside and I like working with healthy people. And I think that's a real distinction right there. You know, if you want to work with people, you know, who are sick, who are healthy, people who are trying to be healthy, that's kind of where I like working, is with basically healthy people. So, and I like working with different specialties. So we work with physicians, we work with physical therapists, strength coaches. I work with the strength coach here at Santa Monica College, you know, podiatrists, chiropractors. So I really like that setting of being able to interact with all the other specialties. I'm kind of unusual in that I worked here for 20 years on a part-time basis. And then on my other half of my life, I spent working, I ran the Santa Monica Sports Medicine Foundation for the Santa Monica, what used to be the Santa Monica Orthopedic Group. And so through that, I had an opportunity to work with the orthopedic surgeons doing research, working FIFA Women's World Cup, administrating that. And then we worked on the PAP ACL prevention program. So I had like my clinical practice where I came into the training room and took care of people. And then the other half of my life, I was able doing a lot of like intellectually stimulating stuff with people who could teach me a lot. So I learned a lot working for the orthopedic group.
Thank you so much, Diane. Can you describe what a typical workday looks like for you?
I do not get up early. I am not a good early morning person. So I come in about 10 o'clock. I do paperwork, take care of phone calls and things. I open up the training room at 11. And then we see the athletes before and after practice. So before, we try to get as much rehab in and strength training that we do. So, but at 12:30, we start our first practices, which are women's basketball and women's soccer. And then every 2 hours after that, we have a new sport coming in that starts practice. Like at 2:30, men's soccer goes and women's volleyball. And then at 5 o'clock, our football team practices, and that goes until about 7:30. So we're open, you know, a long time. And then we're open after football practice because we need to see people afterwards. We also hold, we have doctors who come to the athletic training room. And so Tuesdays is our orthopedic doctor, and then on Wednesdays our primary care doctors, and they see the athletes here in the training room and then prescribe them treatments.
Thank you so much. So not super early morning for you, but
No, not at all.
Variety of your day, it sounds
Well,
like.
and then we cover events. So we have evening, you know, volleyball games, basketball games, football games. So we're pretty busy there.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, Diane. It sounds like there's a lot of variety and collaboration as well.
Yeah.
Diane, could you share what are the necessary steps that students must take to obtain your position?
They have to enroll and complete the coursework in an athletic training program. And there are about 12 programs in California right now. But starting in the fall of 2022, the students are going to have to enter into a master's level program. So then after that, they've got to take a national exam. And then after they pass their national exam, each state licenses the athletic trainers differently. So, but they have to start by passing the exam.
Okay, thank you so much. And then are there any additional special knowledge, skills, abilities that you think are necessary?
yeah, in this business, you have to be a multitasker. Like you have a lot of balls in the air, you know, you're seeing athletes, but then you've got to talk to the doctor about something else. And then you've got to talk to you have to talk to the coaches. You have to keep them informed. So you have to be able to multitask those things. You have to be a good communicator and a decision maker. And it always helps to be patient because there's so much going on, and you know, you can't let little things upset you because you'll never get through the day that way.
Mhm. Thank you. And what would you say is the salary range for your position?
You know, I look like Rachel, I had to look this up. It's it's average for the country. So the entry level is about 40,000. Mid-career is somewhere about 60 to 80. You know, the community colleges actually pay really pretty well. So we start at 60 and then go to about 110. And then, but pro sports, which is where the money is for athletic trainers, is anywhere from 100K to 250, $300,000. But that's the head person. The assistants make much less because just like Jacques was saying, you know, you're having an opportunity to work with this professional sport, so they tend to pay them less.
Mhm. So lots of, sounds like it's a wide spectrum.
It is a wide spectrum of salaries.
Thank you so much. And then if you could answer, what are the advantages and disadvantages of your job?
The advantages are it's fun covering sports. You know, you have this variety of people that come into the room every day and you're seeing them and you're getting an opportunity to talk with them and impact their lives. So that's always fun. I can wear shorts and sweats, which is which is something great. Even before COVID, I could do that. And then, you know, you're working with a really diverse group of athletes and coaches. And so it's really fun to get to know different people. Maybe one of the problems is I don't know a lot of people on campus because I'm sort of here and tied to what I do here.
Thank you.
You know, the disadvantages, the fall is really hard for us. You know, we have a lot of sports. We have football and 2 soccer teams, which keep us really working hard. We work 6 days a week generally, so we only have 1 day off. And then in the fall, we're really tied to the football schedule. So if there are events on Saturday, family events, big events, you may not be able to attend them because you're really tied to the football schedule.
That's an important point to consider is if weekends are important to you, if that kind of, you know,
Right.
consistent.
And we talked about, you know, that life balance, and it's something that you have to consider. You know, there are different forms. You don't have to be a college athletic trainer. You know, athletic trainers work, you know, in universities and high schools, but they also work in the armed services. They work in performing arts. Cirque du Soleil, if they survive, they hire a lot of athletic trainers. We work in physicians' offices as sort of medical assistants. The FBI, law enforcement hires athletic trainers, and industrial workplaces hire them. Like I have a part-time gig. I work over at FedEx over down at LA airport and kind of just take care of just industrial accidents and problems. And a lot of them are, you know, I sprained my ankle playing basketball, and now my manager wants me to stand up for 8 hours. You know, can you tape me, or, you know, what can I do? So there are a lot of different settings. So when you talk about, you know, that kind of balance, you got to figure out what you want, and then you've got to be able to find a place for you to work that kind of where you can meet that balance.
Thank you, Diane. Yeah, so essentially you can make it work depending on what you decide to go into.
Right.
Type of work. Thank you so much. Lastly, do you want to share any internships that you might have done that really shaped your career path, or any internships that you may be aware of that you would recommend?
Actually, when I was in college, the head athletic trainer made us do some at least visits within physical therapy for inpatient physical therapy, outpatient physical therapy. There weren't a lot of strength and conditioning coaches when I started, but that's where we would have gone also, is to make sure that those aren't the other places that we would like to be, careers that we would like to select. The other part about that is that if you know what somebody else does, that helps you to consult with them later. My strength coach, my physical therapist, I just pick up the phone and I say, hey, I got this problem, can you help me? Or like, what should I do? Or am I on the right path? So do different internships, I think. Right now, athletic training is kind of shut down. Sports is kind of shut down right now. And the professional levels are trying to create bubbles, so they're not going to let different people in to the bubbles that have been created. So what I would say, there are a lot of internship opportunities. Now is the time to like make a list of all the places that you'd be interested in. And so when we're ready to pivot, you have your list, you have your letter written out, and you can pivot and just look for those opportunities. I think somebody else talked about, anticipating working hard in your internship. One of the things I look for when people are interning here is whether they can remember what I asked them to do, in the order that I asked them to do it in yesterday, and whether they're going to anticipate my needs. Like, am I going to have to ask you to do this every day at 4:00, or are you at 3:45? Are you going to go out and do it? So, and I would say if you're going to go and ask somebody, you should have a resume available with your contact information on it, so that I can get a hold of you if I need you.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you so much. So it sounds like everyone so far has shared, have some variety in your internships, and take leadership, take initiative.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dan. We really appreciate your time. We hope you can stick around to answer some questions towards the end. Last but not least, we have Alex here. Alex, in case you didn't hear him introduce himself, if you don't mind just going ahead and giving a brief introduction, and then sharing why you chose your career path.
Yeah, so thanks for letting me join you guys today. Again, I'm a physical therapist. I work in an outpatient orthopedic setting. And so I see a lot of people who are dealing with various orthopedic injuries, ankle sprains, meniscus tears, rotator cuff tears. I also deal with a lot of people who are post-surgical. So they're coming in after a rotator cuff repair, knee replacements, hip replacement. So pretty diverse group of people from all age ranges. I see teenagers all the way up to people in their 90s. So pretty wide range of people. And how I got into this, healthcare and medicine was always something I was interested in from an early age. I mean, I just remember having a stethoscope as a kid and playing with that. And so just kind of always a passion of mine. And then as growing up, I was big into sports, and family was always big into health and fitness. And so physical therapy was really a good blend of those two areas, being able to work in a more traditional healthcare setting, but also, get people to be more involved in exercising and physical fitness and their physical well-being. And so it was really a nice blend of those interests. And then, as I'm sure some of you have had, hopefully, or maybe not hopefully, since usually you have an injury when you come to see a physical therapist, but I had some PT experience myself as a patient growing up. And so that really opened my eyes to what the profession was all about. And so that's where I'm at today.
Thank you. So you kind of had a sense from when you were younger.
Yeah, it was kind of something that I just always had an interest in, and really was excited about.
Thank you so much. Could you please describe what a typical workday looks like for you?
Yeah, so it can be pretty diverse and busy, like our other panelists have talked about. So usually I do start early in the morning. I do have some later start days, but we do need to see some people outside the traditional work hours. So if they need to come in before they go to work, then we'll see them, or vice versa. If they need to come in at the end of the day after their job, we'll see them in the evening. So it can be a pretty wide range of hours. Our clinic here, I see people in the half hour, and so I can see 12 to 16 people in a day. And so, it can get pretty busy and fast paced, and you're dealing with maybe a teenager, and the next you deal with an 80-year-old. And so, you got to really be able to flip your mentality and how you interact with people. And so, you always kind of have to be thinking about that in addition to all the other things you got to do with being able to get them better and move them in the right directions and things like that. So it's very dynamic, fast paced, on my feet a lot, but it's exciting in that same realm. You're not doing the same thing day in and day out, and I enjoy not being able to sit at a desk all day and be able to be up and moving and helping people.
So very, very far from boring and doing the same thing.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you. Are there any specific steps that a student would need to take to obtain your position?
Yeah. So as most of you, I guess, will be in your undergraduate degrees right now, our curriculum right now. And so the most important thing is understanding what the prerequisites are for physical therapy school. Knowing those early, because in the science realm, as I'm sure you've probably found, it's hard to pivot later on. To kind of get the classes in early is important. And you can take that extra time or that extra year. But if you do have a certain number of years that you want to graduate in, you do want to kind of have it pre-planned. So the prerequisites, the general chemistry and physics and biology and all that, and then anatomy is very important too. So anatomy is something that I use every day, and understanding that, and kinesiology, understanding how movement and applies to the anatomy of the human body is really important. And so learning those things from an early time in your education, and then being able to then use that later on in your physical therapy program is really important. So prerequisites, the physical therapy is now all at a doctoral level. It's transitioned in the last decade or so to that. And so it's a 3-year program, and does require a GRE. So that's something that you would want to kind of look into as well. And then, the other important thing at this stage in your studies would be, like everyone else talked about, is volunteering or finding internships or jobs that get you immersed in the field. So I did that myself. I spent some time in the similar setting that I'm in now, in outpatient orthopedics, but I also did an inpatient skilled nursing facility too. And this was when I was in college, and it really opened my eyes to what the profession was all about. Seeing patients get better, and people graduating and leaving, it's really inspiring. And so you want to kind of see if that's a setting that you're interested in, and something that you're passionate about, because you don't want to be in a field where you're not going to be enjoying everything that you do day in and day out. So really getting a sense of that from an early on is important.
Thank you so much. I think you touched on most of the things for question number 5, but would you say, is there any specific skills that students should be learning right now during their undergraduate career?
Yeah. So again, the anatomy and kinesiology is really important. Again, you'll get anatomy in physical therapy school, but I know I really did better because I had a good understanding of that going in. So being able to take those classes ahead of time is very important. And really, recognizing that now is the time that this is your career, right? So you're studying now for your future. And so spending that extra time on those classes, and maybe going above and beyond just the understanding of the basic knowledge, but really being able to adapt it and apply it to, different situations. I think it's also, critical thinking and spatial awareness is really important in our field. And so good playing sports yourself, having hand-eye coordination, understanding how we move in space. I mean, those are all things that I use every day, and pretty important in our field. And then also interpersonal skills. We deal with, like I said earlier, people of all different backgrounds and different ages and different mindsets, and being able to adapt to them is what's important, right? So I'm not here for them to comply to me, but I'm here to comply to them, right? So whatever their outlook is on things, I kind of have to meet them at their level. So that way we're kind of moving together and getting them better, because that's the goal at the end of the day.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Yeah.
Could you share the salary range for a physical therapist?
Yeah. So again, pretty diverse. A lot of it's going to depend on the setting you're in and also the location that you're in. So a big city tends to probably have a better salary than some more rural areas. And then some inpatient settings, hospitals, skilled nursing facilities tend to have higher pay than outpatient. But you know, for myself, I enjoy the outpatient experience and being able to work with that kind of group of people. But some people really enjoy the inpatient realm and working with people while they're in the hospital or in a skilled nursing facility. But generally across the board for entry level, you're probably looking at like a $75,000 a year range. Again, in Los Angeles or in a metropolitan area. And then as you advance your career, I mean, it can take a whole lot of different twists and turns. Mid-range, I mean, you're looking probably somewhere around 100,000. And then advanced could be 125 to 200 plus, kind of depending on what you're doing. So like Jacques was talking about earlier, if you're in ownership or management, definitely, you know, a lot more. If you're in a management and a hospital based, you know, that's also something that you would potentially earn more from. So pretty wide range, but I think that kind of hopefully gives you a little bit in terms of the base there.
Yeah, it definitely does. I think across the board, we're hearing that there's a lot of variety. There's a wide spectrum depending on what specific kind of setting that you go into and position that you take on.
Right.
Thank you so much for that. And then if you could just describe some pros and cons, advantages, disadvantages.
Yeah. I mean, the advantage that I really see is it's a dynamic career. So, you know, I'm always up, I'm always moving, I'm always working with people. They're telling me their stories and hearing all kinds of things and working with them to make them better, right? So, and I'm seeing all kinds of different injuries. And so one person's ankle sprain is a lot different than another person's ankle sprain. And so even though they might have the same diagnosis that they come to see me at, the treatment and how I approach a treatment is always very different. So no patient's the same, no day is the same. So it really keeps me on my toes, you know, both literally and figuratively. And so I enjoy that. I enjoy working with people and really getting them better, right? Being their coach in order to get them to where they want to be. And so that's something that is also the challenge at this day and age, is people hope and or want to see kind of instant gratification. And I think all these panelists today we're all in a place where you got to put in the hard work and dedication. And so being able to convince people of that can be a challenge at times. And so that can be something that is hard to work with. But another aspect of the physical therapy profession is that there's a lot of different things you can go into. So myself, I do practice most of the time, but I also do some teaching at USC and in the physical therapy department. And so it's given me an opportunity to do some teaching, which is something I really am passionate about. And I have colleagues and friends who are involved in research. And so they'll do research in a clinical level, in an institutional level, in the college. I know people who are really involved in policy making and advocacy, and on the and the national level, working with the American Physical Therapy Association, and then management too. So I have friends who are in management positions at hospitals. And so, you know, as they maybe grow a little bit tired of seeing patients day in and day out, they can move into a more traditional kind of management setting. So there's really a lot of different ways you can take the profession. And I think that's just an exciting opportunity there. But I think, you know, a disadvantage or something that makes a job challenging is it can be definitely physically and mentally tiring. Definitely at the end of the day, I get home and I'm tired. But again, I think having that passion and interest in the field is really what drives me day in and day out to go through that. And then the other things are, the paperwork and documentation and dealing with insurance companies and government policy changes. Those types of things are kind of the necessary evil of the job, something we have to deal with, but obviously not the reason we got into the profession.
Thank you so much, Alex. And our last question for you specifically is, are there any internships that you would recommend to students?
Yeah. So yeah, I think it is a challenging time right now. I think from my understanding, probably some inpatient experiences are going to be hard because hospitals are really, kind of locking down in terms of who they're letting in and out. So that does provide a challenge. And then in terms of outpatient settings, I think it's going to be diverse what you see. Some clinics like ours have returned, and we're seeing people in clinic. Some are being, a little slower in returning. We are an essential business, so we are able to be open. And so being able to reach out and trying to get as diverse of a different experiences as you can is important. But I wouldn't, in physical therapy, in the 3 years of your DPT curriculum, you'll do a lot of internships, right? And there's where we really encourage you to work in all different settings. And that's something I did during my time and during the 3 years program. And so I think what schools want to see from early onset is that you are interested in the field, and doesn't necessarily mean you have to have 3 internships in 3 different settings and have to have all this experience, but I think they want to see that you are interested. And so finding an internship that both is interesting to you, but also something that you can do at this date and this time is important. And sometimes finding what you're not interested in is just as important. And so if you get into an internship and you don't like necessarily the people you're working with, or you think maybe inpatient's more your setting, then you learn something, right? And that can be an experience that you should take with you into the physical therapy curriculum. But I think just getting into a program or into an internship and getting your hands dirty a little bit is the most important part right now.
Thank you so much. That's great advice. I want to thank you also, Alex, so much for your time. I know you're super busy as well. Alex was actually with the client right before, so he jumped right on in. I am hoping that many of our students who are joining us today have some questions to ask. If you feel comfortable, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. If you want to ask it of one of our specific panelists, please feel free to do so. Or you can always message them in the chat and we can go ahead and ask them for you.
Hi, I have a question. Hi, my name is Rachel. This is a question for everybody. I was wondering, in times like this where finding an internship or a job might be a little difficult and hard, what would you suggest for a student like me searching for a job to do? Thank you.
I can address that if you want. I mean, I would try to create a different type of internship. I mean, if someone was to come to me and say, Jacques, maybe I can do research, so you don't have to actually go to a location. Is there some area of the industry that you want to understand better? Is there something that I could contribute from that perspective? So I would look at it, from a information-based standpoint as opposed to the practical application of it. So if you went to someone like me and you said, hey, Jacques, where do you want to take your business? Do you want to look at the older population? Are you saying that maybe you want to start looking at young children as part of your business? Where can I help? And then you would be able to use your expertise in terms of research, and then you would at least open the door and someone would be able to see your abilities. And that would be invaluable to somebody. So I don't think that you have to actually go there. But I think that if you looked at it if you say that there is a particular type of business that you wanted to get involved with, and then you did research on the particular demographic itself. So if you were to look, I'm in West LA, and you would say, well, Jacques, in West LA, I could do an industry analysis for you. There's X number of centers like yours, because the industry is going to change. And so when we reopen, how am I prepared as a business owner to take advantage of the new normal. So you may say, listen, here's where the industry's going. Can I help you on the technology side? Maybe I can create a better Zoom platform for you, or some kind of way of approaching this, or soliciting. So I think that it's endless, but I just think that you have to kind of open your mind up to the potential possibilities that will now come available. Like, just look at it this way. Maybe no one has an individual that can only do Zoom workouts. Tom's been doing a ton of Zoom workouts. So maybe you could be that person. Maybe you're saying, listen, if you create the workouts for, you could create, and especially with the senior population is monstrous in terms of fitness. And, if I was looking at something for, someone like me, I don't do as much as I'd like to do in the senior population. So if you came to me and said, hey, Jacques, I think I can help you develop that business, and you would look to me to create the program design, and then you would figure out a way on how to approach that. Think about this, nursing homes, no one can go inside of them. So maybe we could create a Zoom workout around a nursing home with a group. The possibilities are endless if you just start using your imagination.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you
Does
so
that
much.
help? I hope that helps.
I think that's an excellent point, because you may be searching for internships and seeing that, you're not finding as many as you would have months ago. But what Jacques is suggesting is kind of creating your own internship and approaching companies, trainers, somebody that you would want to intern with. And again, I know Jen already plugged in our information there for the Career Services Center, but we could really help you learn how to do that. Like, how do you write that kind of an email to somebody? How do you propose something like that? Thank you so much.
Sure.
Any other questions for our panelists today?
Hi, I have a question. Okay, so hi everyone. My question is based on nutrition. So when doing strength training, how much calories and proteins do I need to eat if my goal is to gain mass? Thank you.
I can answer it if you want. It depends on how much you're exercising, number one, and it's a complicated question. When I talk about nutrition, the first thing I tell people is eat real food. That's the first step. So that would be, real food, organic protein sources wherever possible, tons of color in vegetables, fruits seasonally, and then natural fats. And so that means you would eliminate a lot of the fried foods, a lot of the highly processed foods. If you just start there, and then and let hunger dictate a lot, because if you're training to add mass, that means you're exercising a lot. And so you need to eat more calories. And there's no bad macronutrient, but there's macronutrients are bad only if they, depending on what it's an experiment of one. In your case, if you want to put on size, then you need to eat more overall food. And insulin growth factor comes from carbohydrates. So if you're trying to do it on a very low carb diet, which is very popular right now, it's going to be more difficult for you to do, because you need to release insulin growth factor if you want to add muscle. So I would look to, eating real food, number one, and then just eating a ton of it. Now, if you're not exercising, you're going to end up gaining weight, but it won't be the kind of weight you want. So I'll put that caveat on it.
Yep. Thank you.
Sure.
Can I add in something, even though I'm not a speaker?
Of course.
Yes, please.
I'm only the clinical exercise physiologist. I would suggest collecting some objective data about your metabolic rate. And you could have a baseline metabolic measure or a BMR measure, which is it's a very quick respiratory measure that you use a small sensor device that will give you the amount of kcals or the amount of energy that you require at rest to maintain where you are. And then from there, you can calculate the amount of energy that you expend in your thermic effect of movement each day, and then you can calculate the thermic effect of food. And that's something at SMC in our kinesiology program. We have a couple people on this call that have used those tools that we do in our department. So once we are back on ground, you're welcome to find myself in our department, and we can do those measures for you as a student for free. And then we could also do body composition assessment with a DEXA scan, and that'll give you a really good idea of your amount of lean mass and fat mass. And then you can really titrate your nutrition and your training to that. So thank you.
That's free. I'd take advantage of that. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I will.
Of course.
Thank you so much, Cass. We're lucky to have you on here with us today. We appreciate it. Any other questions for our panelists today? We have about 5 minutes.
I have one. Jacques and Alex, how did you learn to run a business?
Yeah. I mean, that's a very, difficult question to answer. I think that, there's some basic tenets, just like, Cass was talking about establishing your base metabolic rate, so you know how many calories you need just to support your body. The same thing holds true for a business. There's certain basic tenets. You can't spend more money than you make. You have to. I think that probably the best way to do it to start a business is you have to say, is it something that I'm willing to really do? Because from the outside, it may look easy. From the inside, it's not. And I think that what Alex said with the regulations that are constantly changing, even, he's got insurance codes and billing codes and things that he can do than can't do, that in many cases, he becomes more of an expert in billing than he does in physical therapy, because that's part of the business. So I think that you just have to look at the levers that you need in order to be successful at it. What's going to and start there. Number one, what's the product? Is there some differentiator in the product? And then once you say, okay, can I develop that product, and is there a niche? Is the marketplace big enough? Yeah, it is. In this industry, the marketplace is huge, but the biggest problem with starting your own business in this business, in fitness and physical therapy, is how do you differentiate and how do you market? Because you may have this, you could be the best strength coach in the world, but you can sit there and have no business. And it's frustrating because I see it in the strength and conditioning community, which I do some lecturing to. There's a lot of really good strength coaches, and they get irritated because they look at people on Instagram that have 1 million followers or 500,000 followers, and they go, this person's a moron. And in many cases that can be true. But I look at it and I go, okay, well, let me learn something about marketing. If this person's obviously clever at how they got 500,000 followers on Instagram. Okay, what can I learn from that? So that's the way I try to look at it. And then shore up the things that you can do well and stay in your lane. A lot of people try to be everything to everybody. I think that when I responded to Rachel's question, I said, the geriatric market is an unbelievable marketplace right now for somebody wanting to start out. And so, you may say, okay, well, I want to go there, or I want to do more pediatrics and work with kids. So I think that you first have to determine what is your lane and then where you're going to go with that. And then be willing to pivot, as I said early on.
Yeah, I want to jump in here real quick because I do have to run. But yeah, I think, we are in a service industry, and I think the differentiating factor is ourselves. And so you want to create a brand, you want to create yourself as someone who can help other people. I think that's important before, the primary goal of opening up a business. I think putting yourself in someone else's business and learning from them is probably the most important thing, right? Take those steps to understand what goes in the ins and outs of running a business, but then also understanding becoming a better PT or becoming a better trainer, right? I mean, that's the most important part. And so if you jump the gun on that, even if you are really good at running a business, you're not going to have that service or that product that people are really looking for. So my recommendation is not to jump the gun too soon on that, and really train yourself first. But I do have to run, so I appreciate you guys listening today, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Alex.
All right.
Thank you so much for joining us, Alex. Thank you.
Yeah, very helpful.
You're welcome.
I'm noticing the time. I wish we could spend a whole other hour here answering questions. I just want to thank our panelists so very much for sharing their Friday with us and for really sharing about their experience, their career path, and for answering some of your questions. So thank you so much, Jacques and Diane, and to Rachel and Alex who have departed with us. But I do encourage all of our students who are here, first of all, pat on the back for coming and participating and asking questions and being curious. I think this is definitely a great step into learning more about the industry. Like I've been saying, you know, the Career Services Center is really here to support you with any questions that you may have. You can go on SMC on our website and find us. I know Jen has also shared our information in the chat as well. And I encourage you, if you have more questions, if you have more burning questions, I encourage you to go out and try to do some informational interviews. Reach out to people and see who else you can talk to ask more of these industry specific questions. But I know I'm much more motivated to get out there this weekend and get moving and get my exercise in. And hopefully you are too. But thank you all so much for joining us. And thank you, Jenna, for being an awesome co-host.
Yeah, you did a great job. All right, have a great weekend, everyone, and get outside. Exercise.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.